My mother placed her hand on the will, fingers slim, elegant, steady, yet her voice shook with a coldness that could freeze oceans. She didn't blink, not once, not even when her words sliced straight through my chest like polished steel. "You won't get a single cent." The room suddenly felt too small, too quiet, too heavy. The ticking clock on the wall echoed like a countdown to my downfall. The lawyer shifted awkwardly, clearing his throat, but no sound could soften what had already been said. My step. Brother Aryan leaned back in his leather chair beside her. Smug, satisfied, victorious without lifting a finger. He hadn't worked a day for my father. He had joined our family late, long after I had already memorized the shadows of this house. Yet he smiled as if every brick, every memory, every drop of my father's sweat belonged to him by birthright. The lawyer began reading the will, father's business, house, savings, land, all under Aryan's name. My name did not exist. It was like hearing the story of someone else's life, someone else's pain, and yet it was mine. I opened my mouth, but no words formed. Anger, disbelief, helplessness, all tangled inside me like chains. My throat stung with unshed words, unscreamed truths. I wasn't expecting millions. I just wanted proof that I mattered. Even a single sentence, a small memory, a father's love reflected somewhere, but life rarely offers mercy. Mother stood up first, her chair scraping sharply against the floor. She didn't look back, not even once. The sound of her heels grew softer, more distant, until the door closed behind her like a final verdict. Aryan followed, giving me one last glance, a smirk still twisting at the edge of his mouth. I remained seated long after the room emptied. The leather chair felt like ice beneath me. The lawyer gently placed a hand on my shoulder. "I'm truly sorry, son." The word son stung. My mother never said it like that, warm, soft, human. Outside, winter wind slapped my face as if the world wished to remind me the cruelty wasn't over. I walked alone through the parking lot, every step heavier than the last. Snowflakes fell slowly, melting the moment they touched my skin. Just like the love I once longed for here, then gone. That night, I lay in my small rented apartment with peeling paint and flickering bulbs. I stared at the ceiling, desperate to understand where I went wrong. But I knew the answer. I was never chosen. Not as a son, not as an heir, not even as a memory. And in the silence of that night, with cold seeping into my bones, I whispered to myself, this pain will not end me. It will rebuild me. The first weeks after the will felt like drowning with open eyes. Days blurred into each other, cold mornings, long nights, hunger, silence, and the same words echoing relentlessly. "You won't get a single cent." Not because I didn't deserve it, but because she never wanted me to rise. I picked up any job I found. I carried crates in warehouses, hands bleeding through torn gloves. I washed dishes in restaurants where people barely looked at me, as if poverty made me invisible. Some nights I slept without food, stomach twisting like it wanted to eat itself. I kept the lights off to save money. Darkness became my roommate, hunger my shadow, and grief my pillow. Yet something inside me wouldn't die. Every insult at work, every coin I saved, every meal I skipped became a brick in the foundation I was building within myself. I didn't know how to start a future, but I knew how to survive. Pain taught me discipline. Loss taught me hunger, not for food, but for value. For identity, and slowly, I began to change. I spent nights in public libraries reading about business, finance, human behavior. While others slept, I devoured books, built plans, made mistakes, failed, then tried again. My hands trembled from exhaustion, but my mind burned bright like wildfire. I started small, buying broken phones, fixing them, selling at profit. From that, I saved enough to rent a tiny space for repairs. My shop was barely a shop. Just one table, one bulb, one dream. But customers came slowly, then steadily. Money didn't make me proud, change did. I no longer walked with my head down. I no longer felt like the forgotten son. I became a man who needed no inheritance, no blessing, no love to stand. Years passed like thunderstorms, loud, destructive, cleansing. My business expanded. A second shop, a third, soon a company, then investors, meetings, conferences. Deals I once only read about became my daily language. Failure still came, but instead of breaking me, it sharpened me like steel against stone. One morning, standing inside a glass office overlooking the city, I realized something unbelievable. The boy who was denied everything now owned something bigger than inheritance, his future. But success didn't erase the wound. Every milestone, every achievement echoed the same ghostly sentence: "You were never meant to have this." And maybe that's why revenge felt less like anger and more like unfinished business. I didn't want to hurt them. I wanted them to see the man their betrayal created. The storm inside me no longer destroyed me, it powered me. 12 years reshaped me into someone unrecognizable. My eyes no longer held the timid fear of a forgotten child. They carried storms. My voice no longer shook like cracked glass, it carried command. And fate, in its ironic poetry, brought them back to me. It was a cold Monday morning when my secretary knocked softly on my office door. "Sir, there's a woman and a man asking to meet you. They refuse to leave." I looked up from my desk, uninterested, until she spoke their names. "My mother, Arian." For a moment the world went silent. I felt the past rush through me. Cold dinners eaten alone, birthdays forgotten, the will reading like a sword across the heart. I inhaled slowly, controlling the tremor beneath my ribs. Send them in. The door opened, and time stood still. My mother entered first. Her once flawless grace was gone, eyes sunken, shoulders fragile, a tremor hiding in her breath. Arian followed, no longer the golden child. His pride dismantled, confidence washed away like chalk in rain. They looked around my office, stunned by the luxury, the success, the height of the building reflecting how far I'd risen from their rejection. My mother's gaze finally found mine, and disbelief shattered across her face. You're the owner." Arian stared like he'd seen a ghost, unable to reconcile the successful man before him with the boy he once smirked at. I leaned back in my chair, calm, composed, untouchable. "How may I help you?" My mother's lips trembled. Arian clenched his fists, swallowing pride like poison. Their empire, the inheritance they took from me, was ruined. Their company had crashed, debts towered above them. People they once looked down on now looked down on them. They needed support, money, rescue, from the son they left to drown. My mother spoke finally, her voice cracking like fragile porcelain. "We were in trouble. The house, the business, everything is collapsing. Arian made mistakes, and she paused, tears forming. "We need your help." The universe paused, waiting for my answer. I could have smiled. I could have laughed. I could have thrown her words back like arrows dipped in ice. And for a single, furious heartbeat, I wanted to. So I said it, soft, cold, sharp enough to reopen old wounds. "You won't get a single cent." Her breath hitched. Tears spilled. Arian looked defeated, powerless, stripped of the arrogance he once wore like skin. In that moment, revenge tasted sweet, almost intoxicating. But beneath that sweetness, something else stirred, a quiet ache, deep and unhealed. The unwanted son had finally returned. For days after their visit, sleep became a stranger to me. I had money, success, recognition, yet something felt unfinished. Unsettled in the deepest chambers of my chest. Revenge had been sharp and satisfying in the moment, but later, in the quiet of my dark apartment, it tasted like ashes. Their faces kept returning to me, my mother's trembling eyes, Arian's silent defeat. I remembered myself in those expressions, small, helpless, unwanted. And I wondered, was I truly healed, or merely reflecting the same cruelty that raised me? Revenge had rebuilt me, but forgiveness could free me. A week later, I drove to the old family mansion. The gates groaned open like they remembered my footsteps. The house stood tired, not grand as it once was wall-stained, garden overgrown, silence louder than life. I walked through the halls where my childhood footsteps once echoed unheard. Each room whispered memories, birthdays uncelebrated, dinners eaten alone, affection never offered. The house was not home, it never had been. I stood in the empty living room, sunlight falling across the dusty floor like faded hope. I didn't cry. The boy inside me had already shed all his tears years ago. That night, I made a decision not driven by sympathy, but clarity. I settled their debts anonymously, cleared the loans, stopped the auction of the house. No one knew the guardian who saved them was the son once denied everything. Kindness would be my final revenge. A month passed before they returned to my office. This time they came quietly, not with expectations, but gratitude wrapped in shame. My mother walked closer than before, slowly, cautiously, like someone approaching a grave they once built with their own hands. Her voice broke on every word. All these years I thought strength was pride. I was wrong. She took my hand, not possessively, but pleadingly. You helped us, why? I breathed in deeply. I wanted to say because you needed it, but truth demanded something deeper. Because I didn't want to become you. Her tears fell like rain, too late to save the past, but enough to wash old bitterness away. Arian lowered his head, guilt carving into his posture. They were no longer powerful. They were human, broken, learning humility in the hardest way. My mother whispered, faint and fragile, "Can you ever forgive me? Forgiveness is not forgetting. Forgiveness is choosing peace over poison." I released her hand gently. "I forgive you, but I cannot come back home." I walked away, not as the abandoned child, but as a man who survived betrayal, transformed it, and rose beyond it. Revenge was sweet, forgiveness was sweeter, and peace was finally mine.